Some truths strike harder than any bullet. On one August morning, a German ace looked at an American fighter and realized that the war he had spent years fighting was already lost. August 17, 1943, 0930 hours. Rechlin Test Center, 90 kilometers north of Berlin. Oberleutnant Hans-Joachim Jabs stood on the tarmac studying the strangest aircraft he had ever seen. Before him sat a captured American P-38 Lightning under armed guard. Twin booms, twin engines, and a central nacelle that looked as if several different teams had designed it without speaking to one another. To German eyes, it violated every aesthetic rule of aircraft design. Jabs had been summoned from 4th of November, Nachtjagdgeschwader 1, only 3 days earlier. The order came directly from Luftwaffe High Command. They needed the judgment of a combat pilot. Rechlin engineers required an operational assessment. He did not understand why they had pulled a night fighter pilot to evaluate a day fighter. He did not understand why this aircraft demanded such urgency. But as he stepped closer and the morning sun glinted off the twin Allison engines, Jabs felt a sensation he had never known in 50 confirmed victories. Unease. Not because of how the machine looked, but because of what it represented. The engineers were about to show him something that would make clear why Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring had ordered the entire evaluation placed under strict secrecy. 3 days earlier, August 14, 1943, 22:15 hours. 4th Group Nachtjagdgeschwader 1 Operations Room, Lüneburg. Jabs had returned from a night intercept mission. 2 Royal Air Force Lancasters confirmed destroyed over Hamburg. His 49th and 50th victories. A teletype message waited on the table. Oberleutnant Jabs report, Rechlin Test Center 0816. August stop, Luftwaffe, High Command, priority, stop, combat evaluation, captured enemy aircraft stop. His Staffelkapitän watched him read it. They are pulling you off operations for aircraft testing. Jabs said nothing. In 2 years of combat service, he had never been summoned to Rechlin. Test pilots examined captured aircraft. Engineers prepared technical reports. Combat pilots flew missions. The order was highly irregular. Next morning, Jabs boarded a Ju-52 transport for Rechlin. The facility stretched across 400 hectares. Hangars, test stands, wind tunnels, laboratories, the beating heart of German aircraft research. Hauptmann Klaus Becker, senior technical officer, greeted him at the airfield. Becker's first words were delivered with absolute seriousness. Oberleutnant, what you see here is classified Geheimkommando Sache. You will discuss nothing outside these walls. They walked past rows of captured Allied aircraft. Spitfires, P-47 Thunderbolts, B-17 bombers, all bearing Luftwaffe test markings. Then Becker stopped at Hangar 7. Inside stood the P-38 Lightning, captured intact in March after an emergency landing in occupied France. We have completed 47 hours of ground testing and 12 hours of flight testing, Becker said. His expression was grim. Reichsmarschall Göring wants assessment from combat pilots with twin-engine experience. You have 800 hours on the Bf-110. That is why you are here. What Jabs did not understand was why Becker looked as if he were delivering tragic news. 0945 hours, Hangar 7. Floodlights bathed the P-38 in bright white light. Becker handed Jabs a technical file. We will review the aircraft step by step. I want your judgment as a combat pilot, not as an engineer. Jabs circled the Lightning slowly. Twin Allison V1710 engines, each rated at 1,475 horsepower. 12-cylinder, liquid-cooled, counter-rotating propellers that neutralized torque. The twin boom design looked ungainly, The central cockpit and nose wheel appeared almost improvised. "Your first impression?" Becker asked. "Ugly," Jabs answered. "Visibility is uneven. The booms create blind sectors. In a turning fight, a Bf-109 pilot could exploit them." Becker nodded. "That was our first thought as well. Keep going." Jabs climbed onto the wing. The construction surprised him. Flush rivets, smooth metal skin, no gaps, no irregular joints. He ran his hand along the cowling. Manufacturing tolerances were remarkably tight, tighter than any German production aircraft he had ever inspected. "Interchangeable precision parts," Becker explained. "Every component produced to identical measurements. No hand-fitting during assembly." Jabs remembered watching Bf-110s being built at Gotha. Skilled workers filing edges, shaping panels, adjusting individual pieces. Every aircraft was different. The P-38 looked like it had rolled off a machine line. "The armament?" Jabs asked. Becker led him to the nose. A 20mm Hispano cannon and 450 caliber Browning machine guns, all centered in the nose. Concentrated firepower. No convergence issues like wing-mounted guns. The implications were immediate. German fighters mounted cannon and machine guns in the wings. Pilots had to judge convergence distance exactly. Too close or too far, and rounds dispersed harmlessly. The P-38's design eliminated that limitation entirely. "Combat effectiveness?" Jabs asked. "Severe at close to medium range," Becker answered. "But that is not what concerns us." He motioned toward the engines. "We need to show you something more important." 10:30 hours. Engine test cell. One of the Lightning's Allison engines sat mounted on a stand. Engineers had taken it apart completely. Every piece measured, labeled, analyzed. Becker handed Jabs a flight report. Page 7. Jabs read quickly. His eyes froze at one paragraph. Test pilot Lieutenant Werner Hoffmann had simulated single engine failure at 6,000 meters. The right engine was fully shut down. The aircraft maintained level flight. Control remained stable. The pilot reported manageable handling on one engine. Jabs looked up sharply. "It flew on one engine for 90 minutes, Becker said. Hoffmann completed an entire circuit, climbed to 7,000 meters, performed combat maneuvers, and landed normally. For Jabs, the meaning was devastating. The Bf-110, his long-time aircraft, was almost uncontrollable if one engine failed. Asymmetric thrust caused violent yaw. Many pilots bailed out rather than risk a landing. Jabs had lost 3 experienced comrades to engine failures alone. "How is this possible?" he asked. Becker explained each factor. Counter-rotating propellers eliminated torque imbalance. The twin boom layout distributed weight evenly. Large vertical stabilizers strengthened directional stability. The engines were mounted close to the aircraft center line, reducing yaw when one engine failed. Jabs studied the disassembled parts. Everything was interchangeable and precisely machined. "Our Bf-110s use hand-fitted mounts," Jabs said quietly. "No 2 aircraft are identical. Weight distribution varies. When an engine fails..." He did not finish. Becker nodded. "The Americans design for redundancy. We design for peak performance. They assume engines will fail. We assume they will not." In that moment, Jabs understood something deeper. This was not about the P-38 alone. It was about fundamentally different philosophies of war. German engineering sought perfection. American engineering sought survivability. And in prolonged combat, survivability often trumped perfection. 11:45 hours. Recline briefing room. Becker spread several maps across the table. "Look at the combat radius," he said, pointing to the specifications. "With external tanks, 650 miles. without tanks, 450 miles. Jabs traced the circles on the map. 650 miles from England covered all of occupied France, all of Belgium, and a deep portion of Germany. That is nearly triple the range of our best fighters, Jabs said. Correct, Becker replied. The Bf-109G achieves about 350 miles with a drop. Tank. The FW-190A around 320. The Bf-110G roughly 450 at best. Becker drew several arcs on the map. But from English bases, this is what American P-38s can reach. Jabs understood instantly. With those ranges, American fighters could escort bombers to Berlin, Munich, and every major industrial center inside the Reich. German air defense doctrine depended on intercepting unescorted bombers beyond fighter cover. If escorts could follow all the way to the target, there would be no safe interception zone. How do they achieve this? Jabs asked. The fuel system, Becker said, pulling out diagrams. The P-38 carried 410 gallons internally. With two 150-gallon external tanks, total fuel reached 710 gallons. At high-altitude cruise, the Allison engine consumed remarkably little for its output. Becker wrote calculations on a board. At 25,000 feet, at cruise settings, the Lightning achieved nearly 8.8 hours of endurance with external tanks, covering over 2,500 miles. Operational combat radius after maneuvering reserves was 650 miles. Jabs compared this with the Bf-109G. Our fighters carry 88 gallons internally, he said, and 66 in the drop tank. 154 total. The Daimler-Benz 605 engine consumed far more at similar speeds. Endurance barely exceeded 2 hours, for a maximum range of roughly 590 miles and a combat radius of only 350 miles. The disparity was overwhelming. What happens when they escort bombers to Berlin? Jabs asked. Becker pointed to engagement timelines. If 100 P-38s escort a bomber formation and we scramble 200 fighters, our pilots have 15 minutes of true combat time before fuel forces withdrawal. The P-38s remain over the target for roughly 90 minutes. Jabs understood immediately. They do not need superior tactics, he said slowly. They only need to outlast us. Exactly, Becker replied. And the P-38 is only one of their long-range fighters. Intelligence reports that the P-51 Mustang will exceed even this range. Jabs had fought over many battlefields, won many engagements, and seen many comrades fall. But this realization shook him. Germany could win every dogfight and still lose the war. 1,400 hours. Rechlin Industrial Analysis Section. Becker brought Jabs into a secure room covered in production charts and reconnaissance photographs. What you see now is classified at the highest level, Becker said. He opened a file stamped Geheim, United States Aircraft Production, 1943. The Americans have produced 10,037 P-38 Lightnings since 1941, Becker said. Current output is about 200 per month at Lockheed's Burbank plant. Jabs did the math. Around 2,400 per year. Now compare with German twin-engine fighter production. Becker laid out Luftwaffe reports. We produce roughly 150 Bf-110s per month, 1,800 per year. The difference was noticeable but still within reason. We are not being overwhelmed, Jabs said. Becker's expression hardened. That is only the P-38. Add the P-47 Thunderbolt. Republic produces 350 each month. The P-51 Mustang will soon reach 400 per month. The P-40 Warhawk remains at about 200 per month. He wrote the totals on a chalkboard. American fighter production for August 1943. P-38, Lightning, 200 per month. P-47, Thunderbolt, 350 per month. P-51, Mustang, 400 projected per month. P-40 Warhawk, 200 per month. Total: 1,150 fighters each month. German fighter production for August 1943. F-109, approximately 1,000 per month. FW-190, roughly 450 per month. F-110, around 150 per month. Total: 1,600 fighters per month. On paper, Germany appeared to be ahead, but Becker shook his head. Now, look at engine production. He showed photographs of American factories. The P-38 used the Allison V1710 engine. Allison's Indianapolis plant produced those engines not only for the P-38, but also for P-40 aircraft, P-39 Cobras, and P-63 King Cobras. But the P-47 Thunderbolt used a completely different engine. The Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp, an 18-cylinder radial delivering 2,000 horsepower. Pratt & Whitney operated multiple enormous plants. Output exceeded 2,000 engines per month. The truth hit Jabs suddenly. They can replace losses without slowing production, he said. More than that, Becker replied. If one factory is destroyed, others continue at full speed. He opened the final file. Photographs showed vast American assembly halls, production lines stretching farther than Jabs could see. This is Willow Run, Becker said. Ford Motor Company's bomber factory in Michigan. One B-24 Liberator every 63 minutes. He showed more images. Boeing producing B-17 Flying Fortresses, Consolidated Aircraft, Douglas Aircraft, North American Aviation, Lockheed. The Americans are not only outproducing us in aircraft, Becker said quietly, they are outproducing us in industrial capacity by an order of magnitude. A final aerial photograph showed the Willow Run plant in its entirety. This single factory is larger than all of Messerschmitt's facilities combined. And the United States has dozens like it. At that moment, Jabs understood the true purpose of his visit. This was not an evaluation of a captured American fighter. It was an evaluation of whether Germany could defeat an industrial power on the scale of the United States, and the answer had already been written in numbers no pilot could overcome. 1630 hours. Recline tarmac. The sun cast long shadows behind the P-38 Lightning. Jabs stood alone beside the aircraft. He recalled the figures Becker had shown him. American production, 1,150 fighters per month, 13,800 per year. German production, 1,600 per month, 19,200 per year. On paper, the two nations seemed close, but German aircraft required skilled hands, careful fitting, and individual craftsmanship. Production bottlenecked at every stage. American aircraft were built with interchangeable parts by unskilled workers on assembly lines. Their bottleneck was only raw materials, and the United States possessed raw materials in overwhelming quantities. He thought of the P-38's twin-engine redundancy. German fighters were designed with the assumption that engines would not fail. American fighters were built assuming that they would. He thought of the 650-mile combat radius. American escorts could reach any target in the Reich. German fighters with limited fuel could never stay in the fight long enough. He thought of the Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine, 2,000 horsepower, produced at a rate Germany could never match. The conclusion was unavoidable. Germany was fighting a war of craftsmanship against a nation fighting a war of mass production. And mass production had its own brutal strength. A staff car approached. Becker stepped out. "Your assessment, Oberleutnant?" Jabs remained silent for a long moment. "The P-38 is not pretty," he said finally. "Its visibility is uneven. A skilled Bf-109 pilot can exploit its weak angles." He paused. "But none of that matters. What matters is that the Americans build 200 of these each month. What matters is that it survives engine failures that would kill a Bf-110 pilot. What matters is that it can escort bombers to any point inside the Reich." He looked Becker directly in the eyes. "What matters is that we are fighting an enemy who does not need better aircraft. They only need more aircraft, and they can build far more than we can ever destroy." Becker nodded. "That is the conclusion Reichsmarshal Göring required from a combat pilot." "Will it change anything?" Jabs asked. Becker's silence was the answer. 3 days later, Jabs returned to 4th of November Nachtjagdgeschwader 1. He flew 47 more missions. He achieved 28 additional confirmed victories, bringing his total to 78. He survived the war, but on August 17, 1943, standing beside that strange American fighter at Rechlin, Hans-Joachim Jabs realized a truth no courage or skill could reverse. Germany had already lost. Thank you for watching. If this story brought value to you, please like and subscribe to World War II Chronicles. We aim to preserve overlooked stories and reveal the deeper truths behind the conflict. Where in the world are you watching from? And what other stories about the collapse of German military power would you like us to explore next? Your engagement helps us continue bringing these important histories to light.